Hi there, Brett here at Tabletop Sagas, and welcome back to the channel for the next step in our vlog style painting series for painting up my Currahee Starter box for bolt action and the American paratroopers for World War II. There's a lot of qualifiers in that sentence, but let's just dive in with having a look at where it is that we've been with these miniatures and what the next steps are going to be. So let's pick this one here because it's here. As we left off in the last one, we've managed to get all the base coats for the uniforms and anything that's going to need to be washed in a brown. And we've gotten that brown wash on there. Looking really good. We're starting to pick out the details and we're getting towards being able to see what these miniatures are going to look like in their final form. But we're not there yet. We need to start blocking in the other details. So that's the blacks, which is particularly really just the metals on the weapons, and then the skin. So I think what I'm going to do to start off with now is I'm going to take an easy win because this project is 50 odd miniatures. It's taking a long time. It is difficult. So we're going to start off with the metals, which is the lesser of the two. We've just done the browns. That was a big task. The skins, that's going to be not as big of a task, but still sort of second biggest. The metals, they're going to be the easiest of the three things. So let's give ourselves as quick a win as we can get in this project. I'll crack on with that and we'll be back shortly. Well, that took far longer than I planned it to do. I've managed to get all of the blacks and all the skins done, get all the washers on, all that sort of good stuff. However, then I've got this is definitely starting to not quite defeat me, but it's taken so long between wins and the project's not done. I'm definitely starting to lose a bit of steam on this. I've probably had about 5 days now break. I did have my time off and try to do as much as possible, and then afterwards I was just like, no, I need some time away from this project. And you know what? You have to do that sometimes, and it is okay to recognize that before it beats you and you end up never finishing it, take a step back, have a breather, and then come back to it. And that's what I'm doing, and I've got an enthusiasm to get this done now. So where are we at and what are the next stages? Well, starting with the vehicles, the next stage for these is going to be relatively simple, and it's that we need to get them on their bases. So we've got these three here. This one needs definitely, and not, I think it's just actually the wash that is holding it on that's dried when I've put it there, because that needs realigning, the basing materials need putting on, and the guys need putting onto the bases before we start doing any highlighting, because there's no point highlighting somebody, if he's wrapped in here and you can't see his front because the gun's in the way or something like that, there's no point highlighting the front of him. So I want to get them on the base before I start doing the highlighting. And there is also the dry brushing to go on for these as well. I may do the dry brushing on these first, because that's maybe what I might do is actually one layer of dry brushing, just the initial base coat first, then get everything glued onto the bases, then get the highlights put onto the guns once I can sort of fit it around the guys. That's probably a good step. And then for the models themselves, well, as you can see from here, we've got the metals now done and blacked in, and we've got the skin and the hands all done as well. So I need to start getting some base highlights on these. However, this is the point where I'm going to start to focus in on specific details. I'm going to be re-establishing my base colors, mainly focusing around the upper half of each of the models, and things like the wood, we might not highlight them because that's kind of a secondary detail on these miniatures, so we don't need to highlight them as much. Again, things like, the grenades, they don't actually need highlighting, but certainly the main canvas, the helmet and the skin probably the backpacks and such as well. I think that's probably enough, and then the bases. So a good bit to do, but this is where we're starting to do those smaller little details. We're not doing big sweeping changes quite as much. And I think I'm going to start with the helmets, because the helmets are going to take a bit of dry brushing and could hit the cloth, so we want to tidy that up if we need to. Then we'll do the dry brushing on the bases. That I can do quite sloppy, and I can get a bit of what looks like dirt on the actual models themselves. So that I tend to like doing, such a quick and easy win, and it looks quite nice. And then we'll go on to the uniforms themselves. So we've got a good game plan here. I know what I'm going to be doing. I think the only thing to do now really is I've got the enthusiasm back even, and we just need to really just crack on. So as always with this project, it's continuing to creep forward, for lack of a better word. I've managed to do a fair bit, but it has taken me far too long. But I decided to just, get through the highlighting phase rather than coming back after a couple of steps and then doing a couple more, because, well, quite simply, I'm just going to keep saying the same thing over and over again every single time that I try to. So just blasted through, and we are now at a really nice stage. So I've done all of the base coats, all the washers, and I've done all of the highlighting. Let's see if we can, hopefully this will focus for you, that I've done the highlighting on the cloth, on the helmets, and on the skin. I'm not going to do anything on the guns, the patches. I have done the backpack. So I've done enough where I'm happy with it. And all the dry brushing on the weapons has been done. They've obviously been put all onto their base as well, and base texture have been added as well. And so, to be perfectly honest, at this stage, you could varnish these and they'd be good. There are still, however, 2 more steps that I do want to do, which is I want to get the decals on, or decals, I can never remember. I think it's decals. Yeah, let's go with decals. So I want to get the decals on, and then probably put some tufts on the bases to give them a little bit more greenery and a little bit more life. But before we get to that, let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail. So we've got them split now. I've taken them off their bases because I find that decals are a little bit fiddly, so being able to really get in there is a little bit better. They are split down into groups. We've got our 2 squads with the potential options that you can have for it. So it's 15 guys in this one, 14 guys in this. It's not ideal, but there's enough options here where I can do pretty much everything. We've got our 2 anti-tank teams, our sniper team, our medic, which this is really basic freehanding, but I am weirdly really proud of the medic band that I've done. Doing a bit of investigation, it looks like they didn't have it on their helmets, but they did wear the bands for distinguishing themselves. And my 2 commanders, I think this guy, I would like to try and do him as a captain, because I just like the look of him. This guy is going to be as a lieutenant. Then we've got our mortar, our 2 machine gun bases, a howitzer, and our anti-tank gun. All really happy with how this has come out, all that sort of stuff. One thing I did decide to change was the bullets. I had originally done them black. I wasn't happy with it. So I've just decided to instead paint them with gold and then put a brown wash over them, just to give them a more brassy, metallic sort of look. I think that does suit better. I have done the same as well with the anti-tank rounds, just to add that little bit of extra pop in there. So these are really at a basic stage, but I tell you what, actually, let's have a bit of a look at one in a bit closer detail. So here, hopefully it will focus, is the lieutenant slash intending to use it as a captain, and it is in Warlord resin, so the detail is actually really nice and crisp, and you can see that I've just really gone through and re-highlighted using the base colours for this. I'm particularly happy with the face and how that looks. It's a basic paint job. It's very much a tabletop ready paint job, but it is still a good paint job, and I'm still happy with it. There is, if I want to do a little bit more detail, I could do the patches on the elbows and the knees. I do think they could go with some Russian uniform to bring them up a little bit. And also as well, I could do a second pass doing some extreme edge sort of highlights on the actual jacket itself, which I do think would bring it up a little bit nicer as well. But those are future improvements. I can always do them later on if I want to. Otherwise, I'm happy with how they look. Once we get the decals on these, we add a bit of greenery on the base. We get this varnish to unify everything in terms of finish. This will be a solid look for these. So that's where we're going to leave it for the minute. I'm going to get these decals on, show you how all that looks. So thankfully for you, it'll only take a few seconds, and I will be back to show you the next step. Well, for the final time, I'm back for this project, and I thought I would change the angle a little bit and let's do some glamour shots to really show off these models. And I've done a fair bit of work, as you've seen. I've got them on their bases, got their bases sorted, got the decals on there, and got them varnished. So all the finishing steps that have really brought these together. So I'm just going to go through here and show you different models as they come up. I'll talk a little bit about them if there are any in particular, but just kind of we'll go with it and see how this gets on. So these are the howitzers. You can see these are the vehicles, I guess, quote unquote vehicles at least. These are metal and they older sculpts, I believe, rather than the plastic kit. But they are really nice, came out with a lot of good detail here. I think I could have done one more highlight on the jackets. I do think that would have looked quite nice, but you know what? That's perfectly fine. Overall here, there's a good bit of variation, and I'm happy with how they all look now, that particularly they've lost that shine. I'm also, as well, as always, I love these decals. I know a decal can be kind of as small as you need it to be, and it can be as detailed as you need it to be and all that, but they just add something to add that little bit of completion, don't they? Now this artillery gun, this piece was more than a little bit of a pain in the backside. When I was doing the basing and getting all sorted, I do have to admit I did accidentally drop it, and I have had quite a bit of fun with that metal barrel, trying to get it to be somewhat reasonably straightened up and in a position that doesn't look like it would blow up at the first attempt of firing. So that, I always do be careful with metal large turrets, I think is the key takeaway there. This one as well, I have done, by sheer nature of the size of the base, quite a bit more in terms of the actual tufts that I've put on here. I've kind of tried to keep it so that I want that dirt poking through and people can see it, but that there is still a sense that this is in maybe a field or something, and it's a little bit of a not kept field. It's got, some thicker parts, some thinner, different colours. It's got some wild flowers in there, giving a nice bit of variation. And I've tried to, well, obviously bases like this, they've got maybe 4, 5, 6 of each different types of tuft on them to build up this sort of scene. The smaller bases, they maybe don't have every tuft on them or as many tufts. So for the 40mm, they've got more or less one of everything, but not necessarily multiples of everything. This one has everything, and then the smaller 25mm single models, they just have 2 or 3 on there, depending on how much room I had. I am glad though that I did try and do all the basing all in one go. I think particularly when you're doing a project like this where you know you're going to be doing everything in one big bulk, it helps to keep them unified, because I use a lot of Gamers Grass tufts. They're absolutely, I think, the best quality ones that I've certainly came across, but getting them can be an absolute pain in the backside. So moving on to some individual figures here, we've got the main sort of, I guess really command force for this group. So we've got a lieutenant, a captain, and then a reasonably high grade medic. These are individual heroes that I think are going to be really nice to use with the force. And these, I am really pleased how the first two came out, which are the Warlord Resin. Not a product I've ever worked with before, but I am actually pretty happy with and really surprised the level of quality. The medic, that is just a conversion from one of the plastics. And again, I'm happy with how it came out. I think that I'm weirdly proud of the medic band on the arm. I probably shouldn't be, it's pretty basic, but any element of freehanding I'm always happy with. So I guess the key question now is really, where do we go from here? Well, first of all, I want to go and paint something brightly coloured and have a little bit of a break from some World War II stuff for the immediate future, because this has taken about 5 weeks to do in total, which is about 3 weeks longer than I wanted it to take, about 2 weeks longer than I expected it to actually take. So I've definitely gone over time on this, and I want to paint something that is not greens, browns, and drab, which, don't matter, I love them. This army is such a nice coherent force, but yeah, I just want to do something a bit different. And when I come back to this, I mean, I've still got my box of the just platoons, just the plastic soldiers that I bought as an addition to the starter set, and I can probably paint them up. I think maybe do an extra unit, which allows me to have a platoon's worth of squads, and then maybe do some pathfinders, and maybe another medic, another sniper team, and just a couple of other smaller little options to go along with those. But I want to, I think more than anything first, is play a game with these, and that's something I'm going to try and do in the very near future. Maybe take some photos and document my first experience as to playing bolt action and how did I find it. Past that, though, I think that if I was going to do anything, I would want to be getting some vehicles, so maybe a couple of Shermans and a Jeep or something to have an armoured section from the army that would go along to support these guys. And then I think I want to get some Germans for them to go against as well. Don't get me wrong, I like going down the club, and I absolutely do want to kind of have this as a bit more of a almost competitive product or project that I kind of can play against the people and feel out. But at the same time, I also do very much want to be able to maybe have some friends around here and have the option to be able to play a bit more of a casual sort of almost pre-scripted game of, you know, here are two starter set forces that we can just crack out when we want to play something. So that's everything for the time being with this project, but plenty more in the future to come. I've still got some 10mm stuff to be working on, and I will absolutely swing back to this 28mm bolt action in the relative near future. If you do want to catch any of that here at Tabletop Sagas, do be sure to hit the subscribe button. The first time that I posted any bolt action stuff, it does seem to have been something that was really popular, which, you know, anybody watching this, welcome. Thank you for watching the series. Great to have you. And so yeah, if you can subscribe if you've been enjoying it, maybe share it with some other people, it would really help out the channel. So I've been Brett. Thank you very much for your time following me through this project, and I will see you next time here at Tabletop Sagas.